when you start to meditate, it's like being in the eye of a tornado, right? Whereas most of the time in the non-meditative state, we're kind of lost in the whirling of that tornado, which is of our thoughts, just completely of the nature of our thoughts. Thoughts will arise in this environment, but when you practice meditation and being like in the eye of the tornado, instead of being trapped by the thoughts and caught in their whirlwind-like action, blown to and fro in the turbulence of your mind, instead of that, when one dwells in the eye of the tornado, thoughts arise, awareness goes to the thoughts, it tries to, at least for a little while, as you're, developing dhyana or concentration. The mind still has some kind of, there's like 3 phases. There's one phase where you're walking around normal everyday consciousness, or most people, most of the time, where you're lost in the whirling of your thoughts, lost in the attachment to the idea of this is me, this is mine. These things take on their own kind of self-existence. They seem to be real. Yes, this is me. And I shall be this way, with this kind of hair, this kind of eyes, this kind of body, forever. That's what the thought says. Well, the thought doesn't really even think of ever or not ever. It just gets caught in the idea that it even exists at all. Gets caught in a kind of sleep reality, like a dream almost, where you don't know that you're dreaming. These kind of thoughts and hallucinations of the mind, when they're coming from a place which is not grounded in dharma and realization, these thoughts produce a kind of sleeping state in us, a kind of dream-like unconsciousness. Most of the time, I'm just talking about when the thoughts are arising out of a sense of ego and ownership, a sense of proprietorship, a sense of identification and belonging. So that's the first stage, and then second stage is a kind of intermediate phase when you sit down to meditate. And in this intermediate phase, your mind kind of comes unstuck from this illusion. The mind becomes unstuck one by one from these thoughts as they're whirling around us. And you develop some space in between your awareness and the thoughts. So little by little, in beginning meditation, the thoughts will arise that have been cultivated previously, because it's just the nature of mental energy. The thoughts will arise that have been previously energized by our mind. And with this calm, dhyana, concentration, the thoughts will dissolve. It's like the more lost that we get in our thoughts, the more that we think, this is me, and this is how it is, and this is mine, and this is how I, like I said, it's like a dream where you're just lost in the idea lost in the hallucination, lost, kind of under it, kind of like your mind like goes under these thoughts, these hallucinations, and it loses its clear, calm nature and starts to, depending on the intensity of the thought, will start to give some kind of visceral emotion as well. So they even seem more real because they're giving you this visceral emotion, and then the emotion makes you think the thought is even more real. So it's like this chain reaction. And it's not that thought is wrong or somehow evil or to be avoided. But without the practice of concentration, without the practice of meditation, thought is not something which you control. Thought is not something which you which serves you necessarily, but is something which controls you. Normal everyday situations. This is my bills, and these are my problems, and this is the world that I occupy, and da, 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 da. All of these hallucinations are taken for absolute, eternal, unconscious reality. Something existing separate and apart from the pure nature of mind, empty bliss, and not empty in a void kind of way, but as we shall see, the emptiness is the lack of independent self-existence. Either way. So these thoughts, they take on the character of self-existence, almost like little beings in themselves, like life forms, almost like doppelgangers or like psychic egregores. They take on a kind of astral, submental existence. And people could go on years and years with these, some people like schizophrenics, for example. They develop such a lack of control of their minds and of their vital energies. They pour all of these mental energies into conjuring up these egregors, conjuring up these hallucinations. Not that they're not real either, because I think the reality is much more subtle than just saying, oh, this is not real, and no, this is real. But like a character in a dream, can you say a character in a dream is real or unreal? It's dreamlike. Likewise, schizophrenics or something like that, where their mind is out of control and feeding into their fears, produce this egregor, produce this phantom, psychic, vampiric thought form, which then becomes a real nuisance for them. It becomes a very real thing. Because of just that's how the nature of our mind is. It occupies a more subtle reality, which is not like the physical reality. It's more like a dream. And so this is how so many people get lost in their own fantasies, their own projections. Like, all of that is the same thing I'm talking about, this kind of psychic contamination. So in the second phase of sitting down and meditating, these kind of psychic contaminations are whirling around us. Here might be a memory of something stupid that we did. Here might be a hope of, some male or female, some girl or guy that we're attracted to that we want to, get with. Here might be your own self, narcissistic obsession with holding yourself up above everybody. Here might be the identification with my gender or my nationality or my this or that. And certain of these things might be more naturally, holistically real than other things. Like I said, it's not that I'm saying that these things are like unreal in the sense of like complete non-existence. They're much more subtle. They reflect our mind. They reflect our consciousness. So it's not that they're real or unreal, but they might represent lesser degrees of reality or unreality. Because here I might have some thought of dharma or something. So that doesn't mean that the thoughts of dharma are wrong. But either way, the mind, the clear light of consciousness itself is not a thought. It is the thinker. So in that second stage of meditation, there's a boundary, a border between the thinker and the thoughts, a buffer which is created. And in the third stage of meditation, relatively in this example that I'm giving, those frantic whirling thoughts of the mind settle down, just like a river which is flowing over really shallow water becomes very turbulent, right? It becomes white and bubbly and foamy and very turbulent. But when that same river meets a more deep, right, part of the river, it becomes calm, smooth. Likewise with the streams of life energy within ourselves, which comprise our being. The lower kind of cartoonish almost attachments that most people have, which they seem to value above everything, are like those shallow areas of the river. Since there's a lack of depth, there's a lot of friction and bubbling. We're like the river which is going through a shallow area. But in meditation, the depth sinks into the abyss. And you're now raised within and above the mental plane. And so one has the experience of, instead of being this karma-bound, pathetic creature which is at the mercy of its own impulses, which is basically an animal with some higher function, instead of being instead of being below that level in your consciousness, below the mind and controlled by the thoughts, instead you're raised above the mind and above the thoughts, the super consciousness. At that state, those lower thoughts which other people like to attach onto themselves, like I'm the this or that, whatever, punk rock, gangster rapper, whatever, labels that people like to attach to themselves. At that level, it just seems ridiculous. It seems absolutely insanity. Like the characters of a dream. And that level is the original primordial awareness. It's the basis from which all creation has sprung. Calm, tranquil, blissful mind. And as such, as being the primordial nature, it's your eternal nature. And you see, the process which I've described is not something that can be accomplished intellectually. It's not an intellectual process. It never was, it never has been, it never will be. The intellect can get you to, it's like the background kind of supporting all of this going on. But the actual thing itself, the actual practice is not intellectual. So it's not something that you just say, and now everybody understands. But one needs prajna paramita, wisdom gained through experience of emptiness, of lack of dependent origination. The mind is of the nature of emptiness. Mind is like a clear, empty light, and as such it's able to take on the various forms. It's like the projector of a movie screen, flickering out the screens that run on its memory. And so, as it's the nature, the mind is the nature of emptiness. I mean, can you say that pure cognizance has any thing on top of it? It's what it is. It's underneath things. So as such, it's empty of thingness. And is the thingness which is supporting the every other thingness. So, when the content which the mind has wrapped around itself and tangled in various webs of drama and intrigue, when that mind becomes unraveled through this process of meditation, you see the lack of self-being of these various things which hitherto seemed to be so real in and of themselves. For instance, my fear, or my attachment, or my loathing, or my hope, right? These things so seem to be real in and of themselves. But when this level of realization, consciousness has been attained, you see that they're completely illusory. Not meaning that they didn't exist, as in like some kind of nihilistic, everything is unreal. But they're illusory in the sense of a magician who conjures up an illusion for the bemusement of a crowd. And as such, they can be not taken as such hard, set in stone things. But we see that we're the magician of our lives. And we're part of a grand magical play happening, both within and around us. And nothing in this material world is permanent. Nothing. The sun, the stars, the earth, and the moon will all be turned into ashes one day during the fires of the cosmic dissolution. And the power of Shiva, the destroyer, Lord of the dance, burns up the whole universe with his destructive power. What will remain then of the own existing problems and hopes and dreams? They will not exist in and of themselves, but will be carried within you. You were formed by them. They were formed by you. So, if everything is temporary in this world, what is permanent? Well, it must be that unthing, that background, the mind. Who is the nature of emptiness. So, when we can dwell in that borderland between the permanent and the impermanent, which is the mind of emptiness, when we can dwell in that, we can raise above just being caught in the whirlwind of illusion, caught in the burning fires of samsaric existence. The samsaric world is compared to a world in which a raging forest fire burns on all sides. And this raging forest fire is the illusion which is being treated as real. The karmic actions and reactions which are propelling us on this illusion is the forest fire. Because we constantly feel the suffering, we feel the burning, we feel the, the lack of everything pure and concentrated and good and to do with the nature of the self, the true self. We feel everything of the non-self, with its false happiness, its pride, its vanity, its hopes and fears, and prejudices. Those are the fires which are consuming our world. Fires which are born out of other causes and conditions in which arise, constantly. It's like here's one cause and condition conditioning this other cause and condition, which in turn becomes conditioned and then goes out and causes and conditions more causes and conditions, and more and more and more causes and conditions, until everybody is reacting on everybody and killing each other, which is what we're seeing in this world today. You could get killed walking down the wrong street in this country, even in America. Plenty of places. Just by walking down the wrong street with, a diamond earring or some kind of necklace, jewel, like gold chain or something, you get killed. Why? Causes and conditions, extending back to beginningless time, have produced that chain of, causality. And it's endless. this person jacks my chain, and then I get angry and I go after him and, maybe fight and attack this person, and then he gets angry and then goes and gets his crew or whatever and kills me. And then I have to go in my next life, we have to reincarnate together again so I can kill him. And it goes on and on and on and on. That's what's happening on this world. That's the blazing fire just consuming everything. Simply realize that it doesn't even exist. That's all that's needed. Just to see that all of that shit isn't even real. Complete illusion. And like I said, don't get me wrong, like I'm a nihilist saying that everything is nihilistic and that you should go out and tell everybody that they're unreal and act as if life is unreal and all these things, which a lot of so-called, spiritualists and Advaita Vedanta people in particular like to do. Go out in this nihilistic mode of telling everybody that everything is unreal. And when I say they're unreal, I mean it doesn't exist of its own. I mean that you give it the meaning. Mind applies the reality. It's all in the mind. That's what I mean by saying it's not quote unquote real. There's a big difference to seeing things as flashes of lightning in the mind versus seeing things as statically existing realities which we get lost in. So meditation helps us to develop that distance between the seeing things as statically self-existing realities which I become lost in versus seeing things as experiencing like a space in between those mental ignorances, and seeing those mind creations like they are a flash of magical lightning. So once we can negate those illusions, we say, okay, it's not like this, it's not like that. I know this thing is temporary. I know this is not self-existingly real. So, what is real? So that's like the inverted process of looking from inside to the outside. But when you look within, you see a self-nature which is not impermanent. There's a great quote in the Mahaparinibbana Sutra. It says something like, when the not-self is removed, what remains must be the self. So it's like a beautiful cathartic process when you dissolve those aspects of yourself which you know from meditation are ignorance, because this meditation will bring you to such a peace that ignorant things are like a bad odor, ignorant thoughts become like a bad stench, or like someone hitting you on the side of the head with a stick or something. It becomes very forceful, very apparent that this is wrong. So gradually a disentangling process takes place. You work on yourself. This part of my personality which was ignorant, and I know it's ignorant, I'm going to put less energy into it. And slowly you do put less energy into it. You put more energy into the actual self, which is coursing through you when the mind is seen in its actual form. And when the reality is seen in its actual form, unreal of its own regard, of its own, self-existent, permanent thing, you gradually, like I said, disentangle with those causes and conditions, which I was talking about earlier, which are what that is basically. All of those ignorances in yourself all of those imperfections in yourself, they are what has arisen from previous lifetimes, from previous dimensions that you've been in, whether it's a very nasty dimension like a hell realm or a ghost realm or even a Devic, a god realm. We all get impressions. We develop these karmic causes and conditional impressions. They're called samskaras on the mind from various life, and we take them with us. So in this life we have tons of these samskaras which we've brought with us from previous incarnations. So in the meditation, these samskaras are untied one by one. The karma begins to come off like a weight lifted from your shoulder, and you feel enlightened, like your load has been lightened, like your body has been full of light. So one by one, the karmic attachments come off like pieces of clothing that you're taking off. This piece of clothing was stained and dyed in this realm, in this world. That piece of clothing was stained and dyed and fabricated in that realm, that world, but I don't need it anymore. I see it as unreality, illusion. Something attached to the idea of itself as a permanent own existing thing. That's the nature of everything in this material world. That's why it's so dangerous, because it considers itself in this way which is called ahamkara, or false ego. Everything, everyone, they're all in ahamkara, whether it be an animal, whether it be even a lot of religious people, spiritual people, whether it be a rock, whether it be whatever in this material world, everything is in ahamkara. Otherwise it wouldn't be the material world. Otherwise it would be the Buddha land, or the pure land, or the heaven, paradise, Jannah, Vaikuntha. In those lands, they see that nothing exists apart from the Almighty Supreme Adi Buddha, Adi Purusha, original person, original awakeness. Everything in those places, those higher realms, partakes of the essence of that purity. And everything that exists in the material world is a perverted reflection of that essence. It's all backwards here. That's why we need to go backwards to get back there. The inverse process of empty, empty, and then back up again, we can see full. You don't have to wait till you go up there to exist in that state of consciousness. It's always available to you. The up there is not really up there, but really in here. Truly.